The outpost was quiet, too quiet. The kind of quiet that made Heijin's ears ring as he tightened a bolt on the broken generator. His hands worked steadily, even though his mind wandered. The outpost wasn't much a cluster of metal buildings surrounded by jagged cliffs and endless gray plains, but it was home for now. Or at least it had been, until rumors started spreading about something strange outside the perimeter. Heijin wiped sweat from his brow and leaned back against the wall of the workshop. It was late, and most of the crew had already retreated to their quarters. The only sounds were the hum of machinery and the distant howl of wind whipping through the rocky landscape. He liked working at night. It gave him time to think, away from the noise and chatter of the others. But tonight, something felt different. He heard footsteps before he saw her. At first, he thought it might be one of the guards making rounds, but the sound was too heavy, too uneven. Curiosity got the better of him, and he stepped out of the workshop, scanning the dark horizon. That's when he saw her. A massive creature lay sprawled near the edge of the outpost's perimeter fence, its scales shimmering faintly under the pale light of the moon. It was a dragon. Larger than any Heijin had ever seen in vids or stories. Its wings were torn, one hanging limply at its side, and its body was covered in deep gashes that oozed a glowing green liquid. Clutched protectively under one wing was an egg, smooth and iridescent, pulsing faintly with light. Heijin froze, unsure whether to move closer or retreat. Dragons weren't supposed to come here. They were ancient beings, revered and feared. Creatures of legend who fought wars humans couldn't comprehend. And yet, here she was, wounded and alone, abandoned by her own kind. Heijin! A sharp voice cut through the silence. He turned to see Commander Jae-soo striding toward him, his face tight with anger. "What are you doing out here? Get back to work." I saw something," Heijin stammered, pointing toward the dragon. Jae-soo followed his gaze and sighed heavily. "That thing is none of our concern. We have orders to ignore it." "But it's hurt," Heijin said, his voice rising despite himself. "And it has an egg. We can't just leave it out here to die." "It's not our problem," Jae-soo snapped. "Our mission is clear. Stay focused on repairs and prepare for evacuation. Helping that creature would violate protocol, and I won't tolerate insubordination." Heijin clenched his fists but said nothing. He watched as Jae-soo turned and walked away, leaving him alone with the dragon. For a moment, he considered following orders. After all, what could one mechanic do against the might of the military? But then he glanced back at the dragon and saw the way it shifted slightly, trying to shield the egg with its battered body. Something inside him stirred, a feeling he couldn't ignore. Later that night, after everyone else had gone to bed, Heijin crept out of his quarters with a small bag of supplies. He moved quietly, sticking to the shadows as he approached the dragon. Up close, she looked even worse than he'd imagined. Her breathing was labored, and her eyes were half closed, but they flickered open as he drew near. "Don't worry," he whispered, holding up his hands to show he meant no harm. "I'm not going to hurt you." To his surprise, the dragon didn't lash out. Instead, she let out a low rumble, almost like a growl, but softer. Heijin knelt beside her and carefully placed the food and water he'd brought within her reach. She sniffed at it cautiously before eating, her movements slow and deliberate. As he watched her, Heijin felt a strange sensation in his mind, like a whisper brushing against his thoughts. At first, he dismissed it as exhaustion, but then it grew stronger, more distinct. Images flashed before his eyes, a great battle, flames roaring across the sky, other dragons turning their backs as this one fell. Pain, betrayal, fear. "You're communicating with me," Heijin murmured, awestruck. "Aren't you?" The dragon's eyes met his, filled with both sadness and gratitude. Through the connection, he understood fragments of her story. She had been injured in a fight, left behind by her kin because they deemed her weak. Now, She clung to life not for herself, but for the sake of the egg she carried. It was her last hope, her legacy. He-jin stayed with her for hours, talking softly and tending to her wounds as best he could. He knew he couldn't fix everything, not without proper tools or medicine, but he did what little he could. When dawn broke, he slipped back into the outpost, careful not to be seen. Over the next few days, He-jin continued sneaking out to care for the dragon. Each visit deepened their bond, though he kept it hidden from the others. Word of the dragon spread quickly among the crew, sparking heated debates. Some argued that helping her was the right thing to do, while others sided with Jae-soo, insisting they had no obligation to interfere. Tensions rose as the evacuation date drew closer. Supplies were running low, and tempers flared. He-jin found himself caught in the middle, torn between his growing attachment to the dragon and the weight of his responsibilities. Still, he refused to abandon her. Every night, he returned to her side, bringing whatever scraps of food and makeshift bandages he could gather. One evening, as he sat beside her, the dragon let out a soft trill, nudging her egg gently. He-jin smiled, feeling a swell of determination. Whatever happened next, he vowed to protect her and her unborn hatchling, no matter the cost. He-jin's secret didn't stay hidden for long. It was Eun-ho who noticed first. The young engineer had always been quiet, keeping to himself as he worked on the outpost's aging systems. But one night, while returning from the storage bay, he spotted He-jin slipping out of the workshop with a bag slung over his shoulder. Curious, Eun-ho followed him. He watched from the shadows as He-jin approached the dragon, setting down food and water before tending to her wounds. At first, Eun-ho thought about reporting him. Helping the dragon was against orders, and Commander Jae-soo didn't tolerate disobedience. But as he stood there, watching He-jin work tirelessly under the dim light of the moons, something stopped him. Maybe it was the way He-jin spoke softly to the dragon, or how she seemed to respond with faint rumbles that almost sounded like gratitude. Whatever it was, Eun-ho felt a pang of guilt for even considering turning him in. The next day, Eun-ho approached He-jin during their shift in the workshop. "I know what you're doing," he said quietly, glancing around to make sure no one else was listening. He-jin froze, his hands pausing mid-repair. "What are you talking about?" "The dragon," Eun-ho replied. "I saw you last night." For a moment, He-jin looked like he might deny it. But then he sighed and nodded. "If you're going to report me, just do it. I'm not going to report you." He-jin stared at him, surprised. "Why?" "Because it's the right thing to do," Eun-ho said simply. "And because I think we can make a difference." From that point on, the two men worked together, smuggling supplies to the dragon whenever they could. They divided the tasks carefully. He-jin handled the medical care, using his knowledge of mechanics to fashion makeshift splints and bandages, while Eun-ho focused on gathering food and water. Their partnership made things easier, but it also increased the risk of getting caught. Meanwhile, tensions within the outpost continued to rise. Commander Jae-soo grew more agitated as the evacuation date loomed closer. Supplies were dwindling, and morale was low. Rumors spread among the crew about why the dragon had been abandoned by her kind. Some believed she had been cast out for failing in battle, while others whispered darker tales of betrayal and treachery. Lieutenant Yoon-ju, Jae-soo's second-in-command, kept a close eye on everyone, searching for signs of insubordination. She was a strict officer, known for her loyalty to the commander and her sharp instincts. It wasn't long before she started noticing inconsistencies. Tools went missing from the workshop. Food supplies seemed lower than expected, and both He-jin and Eun-ho were often absent without explanation. One evening, as the two men prepared to leave for another visit to the dragon, Yoon-ju confronted them outside the workshop. "Where are you going?" she demanded, her voice sharp. "Just checking the perimeter." He-jin lied smoothly, though his heart raced, making sure everything's secure. "At this hour?" Yoon-ju raised an eyebrow. "Don't lie to me. I've been watching you." Yunho stepped forward nervously. "We're not doing anything wrong, Lieutenant. We're just—" "Save it," she interrupted. "I'll be reporting this to Commander Jae-soo. If you're hiding something, you'd better hope it's not worth his time." As she walked away, Haejin and Eunho exchanged worried glances. They knew they couldn't stop helping the dragon, but they also knew they needed to be more careful. From that night on, they took extra precautions, avoiding patrols and sticking to the darkest corners of the outpost. Despite the danger, their bond with the dragon only grew stronger. During one visit, she communicated with them again, sharing more fragments of her story. They learned that her name was Ryumi, and that she had once been a proud warrior among her kind. But after sustaining injuries in a fierce battle, her comrades had deemed her unworthy and left her behind. Now, all she cared about was protecting her egg, ensuring that her child would have a chance to live. Haejin found himself marveling at her strength. Despite everything she had endured, she refused to give up. Her determination inspired him, pushing him to keep going even when the odds seemed impossible. The situation came to a head when Commander Jae-soo announced plans to evacuate the outpost earlier than expected. The news sent shockwaves through the crew, dividing them further. Some argued that leaving sooner was necessary to conserve resources, while others insisted they should stay longer to finish repairs. Amid the chaos, Haejin realized what this meant for Ryumi. If the outpost evacuated early, she and her egg would be left behind, doomed to die in the harsh environment. That night, unable to sleep, Haejin sat alone in the workshop, staring at the tools scattered across the table. He thought about Ryumi lying outside, her body growing weaker with each passing day. He thought about the egg, glowing faintly with life, and the promise it represented. And he thought about the evacuation ship, ready to leave them all behind. Suddenly, an idea struck him. It was risky, maybe even reckless, but it was the only thing he could think of. He called Eunho and explained his plan. Together, they snuck into the hangar where the evacuation ship was docked. Using his mechanical expertise, Haejin sabotaged critical systems, disabling the engines just enough to delay departure without causing permanent damage. By morning, the sabotage had been discovered. Panic erupted as technicians scrambled to identify the problem. Commander Jae-soo stormed into the workshop, his face red with fury. "Who did this?" he bellowed, scanning the room until his eyes landed on Haejin. "You! Was it you?" Haejin met his gaze steadily. "Yes, sir. It was me." Jae-soo's expression darkened. "Do you have any idea what you've done? This outpost is scheduled for decommissioning. Every delay puts us at greater risk. I couldn't let you leave her behind." Haejin said firmly. "She's dying. And her egg. It's alive. You can't just abandon them. This isn't your decision to make." Jae-soo snapped. "Your job is to follow orders, not play hero. Consider yourself confined to quarters until further notice." As Jae-soo stormed out, Eunho placed a hand on Haejin's shoulder. "What now?" he asked quietly. "We keep fighting," Haejin replied. "No matter what happens, we don't give up." Outside the outpost, Ryumi lay still, her breathing shallow. She could feel the connection between herself and the humans growing stronger. Through their actions, she sensed a glimmer of hope not just for her child, but for the future of all dragons. And though she was weak, she vowed to hold on, trusting that these brave souls would see her through. The outpost was tense, like a wire pulled too tight. Everyone could feel it. The weight of Haejin's defiance, the growing divide between those who supported him and those loyal to Commander Jae-soo. Word spread quickly about what had happened in the workshop. Some crew members whispered in hushed tones, admiring Haejin's bravery. Others shook their heads, muttering that he had gone too far. But no matter where they stood, everyone knew things were about to change. Haejin sat alone in his quarters, staring at the blank wall. He wasn't afraid of punishment. That wasn't what kept him awake. It was the thought of Ryumi lying out there, her strength fading with each passing hour. The egg she protected so fiercely was alive, pulsing with potential. If they didn't act soon, all hope would be lost. He couldn't let that happen. Not now. Not after everything. Yunho came by later that night, slipping into the room quietly. "How are you holding up?" he asked, sitting on the edge of the bunk. "I'm fine," Heijin replied, though his voice betrayed his exhaustion. "But Ryumi isn't. She doesn't have much time left. We need a plan," Yunho said firmly. "Something bigger than just sneaking supplies. We can't keep dragging this out." "And," Heijin nodded. "I've been thinking about that. What if we moved her? There's a cave system not far from here. It might offer better shelter. Safer for her and the egg." "It's risky," Yunho admitted. "But it's worth a shot. We'll need help, though. More people. Who would join us?" Heijin asked, skeptical. "Most of the crew is too scared to go against Jesu. There are some who believe in what we're doing," Yunho said. "We just have to ask." Over the next few days, they reached out cautiously to a handful of crew members they trusted. One of them was Kyung Min, an older technician who rarely spoke but had a reputation for being kind-hearted. Another was Ji-un, a medic with a soft spot for animals. To their surprise, both agreed to help without hesitation. Even more surprising was when Lieutenant Yoon-ju approached them privately. "I don't approve of your methods," she said bluntly, her arms crossed. "But I understand why you're doing this. If you're serious about moving the dragon, count me in." With their small group assembled, they began planning. They decided to act during the next storm, when visibility would be low and patrols minimal. Supplies were gathered: blankets, food, water, and anything else they thought might help Ryumi survive the journey. Heijin worked tirelessly, modifying a makeshift stretcher to carry her safely. The night of the move arrived sooner than expected. The wind howled fiercely as they ventured outside, struggling against the gale. Ryumi lay where they had left her, her body trembling with effort as she tried to shield her egg. When she saw them approaching, her eyes flickered with faint recognition. "It's okay," Heijin murmured, kneeling beside her. "We're here to help." Ryumi let out a low rumble, almost like a sigh of relief. With great care, they lifted her onto the stretcher, ensuring the egg remained securely tucked under her wing. The process was slow and painstaking, but eventually, they managed to get her moving. Each step felt heavier than the last, the storm raging around them, as if trying to push them back. By the time they reached the caves, exhaustion had set in. The entrance was narrow, forcing them to maneuver carefully. Inside, the air was cooler, the sound of the storm muffled by thick rock walls. They found a spacious chamber deep within the cave and settled Ryumi there, covering her with blankets to keep her warm. "She's safe here," Yunho said, wiping sweat from his forehead. "For now, at least." But Ryumi wasn't done fighting yet. As they tended to her wounds, she communicated with them again, her thoughts clearer this time. She showed them flashes of memories, not just her own, but glimpses of a distant past. A time when dragons and humans had fought side by side, united against a common enemy. A bond forged in fire and blood, long forgotten by both races. "She wants us to remember," Heijin said softly, his voice filled with awe. "She's showing us what we've lost." Kyung Min nodded slowly. "Maybe it's not too late to rebuild that trust. Maybe this is our chance." As they worked, Ryumi used the last of her strength to create a protective barrier around her egg. It shimmered faintly, a translucent dome of light that pulsed with warmth. She looked at them one final time, her eyes filled with gratitude, before closing them and slipping into unconsciousness. "She's given everything for her child," Ji-un said, her voice trembling. "We can't let her sacrifice be in vain." Outside, the storm began to die down, leaving behind an eerie calm. Back at the outpost, Commander Jesu paced angrily, frustrated by the delays caused by Heijin's sabotage. He ordered increased patrols, determined to root out any further acts of insubordination. But despite his efforts, he couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted among the crew. Loyalties were changing, and he wasn't sure he could stop it. In the cave, Heijin knelt beside Ryumi, watching the gentle rise and fall of her chest. He placed a hand on the glowing barrier surrounding the egg, feeling its warmth seep into his skin. For the first time since this ordeal began, he allowed himself a moment of hope. Whatever happened next, he vowed to protect both Ryumi and her hatchling, no matter the cost. The days that followed were tense, both inside the outpost and in the cave where Ryumi lay. The small group of rebels, Heijin, Eunho, Kyungmin, Ji-eun, and even Lieutenant Yoonju, worked tirelessly to care for the dragon and her egg. They took turns visiting the cave, bringing supplies, and checking on Ryumi's condition. But despite their efforts, her strength continued to fade. Each visit felt heavier than the last, as if they were watching a candle burn down to its final flicker. Back at the outpost, Commander Jae-soo grew increasingly suspicious. Supplies were disappearing faster than ever, and whispers of rebellion echoed through the corridors. He called an emergency meeting, summoning the entire crew to the main hangar. His voice boomed as he addressed them, his tone sharp and unyielding. "We are here to complete our mission," he declared, pacing back and forth. "Not to waste time and resources on some abandoned creature. Whoever is aiding that dragon will be held accountable. I will not tolerate further disobedience." His words sent a ripple through the crowd. Some looked away guiltily, while others stood firm, their expressions unreadable. Among them was Hajin, who met Jae-soo's gaze without flinching. The commander noticed and pointed a finger directly at him. "You," Jae-soo said coldly. "You've been at the center of this since the beginning. If you don't step forward now, I'll have no choice but to assume everyone here is complicit." The room fell silent, all eyes turning to Heijin. For a moment, it seemed like he might say something. But then, another voice spoke up. It wasn't just him. It was Kyungmin, stepping forward with quiet resolve. "We all helped. You can't blame one person for what we've done together." Jae-soo's face darkened. "So it's true. You've all betrayed your duty. Fine. Consider yourselves under arrest until further notice." Before anyone could react, Lieutenant Yoonju stepped forward as well. "Sir, with respect, perhaps it's time we reconsidered. These people acted out of compassion, not malice. And maybe there's something worth saving here." Her words stunned the room. No one had expected Yoonju, of all people, to side with the rebels. Jae-soo stared at her, his jaw tightening. "Are you questioning my authority?" "No, sir," she replied calmly. "I'm questioning whether following orders blindly is always the right thing to do." The tension in the hangar was palpable. Crew members exchanged uncertain glances, unsure whom to support. Some began nodding in agreement with Yoonju, while others remained loyal to Jae-soo. The division was clear, and it was growing wider by the second. That night, the group gathered in the workshop to discuss their next move. Heijin leaned against the wall, his arms crossed. "This can't go on like this," he said. "We need to make a stand. If we don't, Jae-soo will keep pushing until none of us have a choice but to obey." "And what do you suggest?" Ji-eun asked, her voice tinged with frustration. "We're outnumbered, Heijin. He has the power to shut us down completely." "Not if we show him he's wrong," Yoonho interjected. "If we prove that helping Ryumi isn't just about breaking rules, it's about doing what's right, he might listen." Heijin shook his head. "I don't think Jae-soo cares about right or wrong. Not anymore. But maybe we don't need him to agree. Maybe we just need to show the rest of the crew why this matters." The plan came together quickly. The next morning, they invited everyone to the cave, hoping to let Ryumi speak for herself. Word spread cautiously, and soon a small crowd of curious crew members gathered outside the entrance. Heijin led them inside, guiding them to the chamber where Ryumi lay. The sight of her, battered but still fighting, struck a chord with many. Her protective stance over the glowing egg was impossible to ignore. "She's communicating with me," Heijin explained softly, kneeling beside her. "She's showing me memories of battles fought alongside humans, of trust and friendship between our kinds. She wants us to remember what we've lost." One by one, the crew members approached, hesitantly placing their hands on the shimmering barrier around the egg. Ryumi reached out to them, sharing fragments of her story through faint psychic signals. Images flashed in their minds, dragons soaring above fiery battlefields, humans standing shoulder to shoulder with scaled warriors, united against a common enemy. For many, it was overwhelming. Tears welled up in Ji-eun's eyes as she stepped back. "I never knew," she whispered. "I never realized." Kyungmin nodded solemnly. "It's not too late to rebuild that trust. We can start now." As the group filed out of the cave, their resolve had shifted. Even those who had once doubted Heijin's actions found themselves swayed by what they had seen and felt. By the time they returned to the outpost, word had spread throughout the crew. More people began speaking out against Jae-soo's orders, demanding that they stay longer to help Ryumi and her hatchling. Jae-soo tried to maintain control, but his authority was slipping. When he ordered patrols to search for the dragon and bring her back to the outpost, several guards refused to comply. Tempers flared, and arguments erupted in the corridors. The outpost, once a place of rigid discipline, was fracturing under the weight of conflicting loyalties. In the midst of the chaos, Ryumi's condition worsened. Her breathing became shallow, and her movements barely registered. Heijin stayed by her side, holding her massive head in his lap as tears streamed down his face. "You did everything you could," he murmured. "Your child will live because of you." Ryumi let out a faint rumble, almost like a purr, before closing her eyes for the last time. The glow around the egg pulsed brighter, as if responding to her passing. Heijin placed a hand on the barrier, feeling its warmth seep into his skin. Despite the grief weighing heavily on his heart, he knew they had to keep going for Ryumi. And for the future she had entrusted to them. Outside, the winds picked up again, howling across the barren landscape. Back at the outpost, the crew prepared for a final confrontation with Commander Jae-soo. Whatever happened next, they were ready to fight not just for themselves, but for the legacy of the dragon who had given everything. The final confrontation came sooner than anyone expected. Commander Jae-soo, desperate to regain control, called for an emergency assembly in the main hangar. The crew gathered reluctantly, their faces reflecting a mix of fear, anger, and determination. Heijin stood at the front of the group, flanked by Eun-ho, Kyungmin, Ji-eun, and Lieutenant Yoonju. They were no longer just a small band of rebels. They represented the majority now, united in their decision to protect Ryumi's legacy. Jae-soo strode into the hangar, his posture rigid and his expression cold. "This ends now," he announced, his voice echoing off the metal walls. "Whoever is aiding that creature has disrupted our mission and endangered us all. I will not tolerate further disobedience." Heijin stepped forward, his heart pounding but his voice steady. "We're not going to stop, sir. What you call disobedience, we call doing what's right. Ryumi gave her life to protect her child. Are we really going to turn our backs on that?" Murmurs rippled through the crowd as others began speaking up. One crew member, a mechanic named Tae-woo, raised his hand hesitantly. "Sir, with respect, I've seen what they're doing out there. It's not about breaking rules, it's about compassion. If we leave now, we'll be abandoning something important." Another voice chimed in, then another, until the room was filled with overlapping arguments. Some still sided with Jae-soo, insisting that following orders was paramount. But most had been swayed by the story of Ryumi and the bond she shared with those who had helped her. Even Lieutenant Yoonju spoke again, her tone firmer this time. "Commander, Maybe it's time we listen to them, she said. If we abandon this hatchling, we're not just losing a dragon, we're losing a chance to rebuild trust between our species. Is that really worth leaving behind? Jesu's face turned red with fury. You dare question me? I am your commanding officer. No, sir, Yunju replied calmly. I'm questioning whether blind obedience is always the right path. The tension in the room reached a breaking point. Jesu tried to assert his authority, ordering guards to arrest He-jin and the others. But when the guards hesitated, looking uncertainly at the crowd, he realized he had lost. The balance of power had shifted, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. Defeated, Jesu stormed out of the hangar, muttering threats under his breath. The remaining crew members erupted into cheers, their voices echoing triumphantly. For the first time in weeks, hope filled the air. In the days that followed, the crew worked together to prepare for the evacuation. Supplies were divided carefully, ensuring that enough remained behind to care for the egg. He-jin led the effort, coordinating repairs and gathering materials to make the cave as safe as possible. The barrier around the egg continued to glow brightly, pulsing with warmth and life. One morning, as the sun rose over the jagged cliffs, the egg began to crack. He-jin and the others rushed to the cave, watching in awe as the tiny dragonette emerged. Its scales shimmered faintly, catching the light like dew on grass. It let out a soft chirp, its wide eyes scanning the room curiously. He-jin knelt beside it, his heart swelling with emotion. The dragonette nudged his hand gently, recognizing him instantly as a protector. He smiled, tears streaming down his face. "Welcome," he whispered. "Your mother would be proud." The crew took turns meeting the dragonette, each person touched by its presence. It seemed to sense their intentions, responding with gentle chirps and playful movements. Through its actions, it communicated a single message: gratitude. As the evacuation date approached, many crew members made the decision to stay behind. They couldn't leave the dragonette, not after everything they had done to protect it. Together, they vowed to raise it, teaching it about both humans and dragons. They hoped that one day, it would serve as a bridge between the two races, symbolizing a new era of cooperation and understanding. On the day of the evacuation, the remaining crew watched as the ship prepared for departure. Jesu boarded without a word, his face unreadable. As the engines roared to life, the crew gathered outside the outpost, waving goodbye to those leaving. But their focus quickly returned to the future ahead of them. Inside the cave, the dragonette stretched its wings for the first time, testing the air currents. He-jin smiled as he watched it take its first clumsy flight, soaring above the outpost and toward the horizon. It was a sign, a promise of hope and renewal. "We did it," Yunho said softly, standing beside He-jin. "Against all odds, we saved her." He-jin nodded, his eyes fixed on the sky. "No, we didn't just save her. We saved ourselves, too." The wind carried the sound of the dragonette's joyful cries, blending with the laughter and cheers of the crew below. Together, they had defied orders, risked everything, and forged a new path. And though challenges lay ahead, they faced them with courage, knowing they had already changed the course of history.